Well, Balance Bosses, I am so excited to bring you Dr. Meghna Dassani, who is here today to talk to us about something that is so important, and that is Airway is your life. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Dassani. I appreciate you taking the time. I understand you typically don't see patients today, but you did today, and so you're fitting us in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be able to chat with you finally.
Yes. Yes, we've been going back and forth, so this is a real thrill.
Made it happen.
Yes. So you are the author of a best-selling book called Airway is Life. That's pretty cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you also do sleep apnea implementation training for dentists and their teams.
Correct.
That is really cool. You're internationally trained, right? You've been trained both in India and the United States in dentistry. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow.
I had to do it to get it right.
Well, I don't think we ever stop learning, right?
We do not.
And then currently you practice in Houston, Texas, and you've had that practice for 15 years. Is that correct?
I've had the practice for 10 years. Prior to owning the practice, I was an associate.
Okay, fantastic. And your passion is comprehensive care, but with a focus on really discovering and treating airway disorders in adults and children.
Yes, yes.
Oh. So tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into dentistry, how it led you to this path, and why Airway is such a passion of yours.
Sure. I joked earlier that I had to do dentistry twice to be able to get it. But I'm born and raised in Mumbai, India, and I went to dental school there, and I actually owned a practice for 6 years before I met my husband and I moved to the United States. Now, as an internationally trained dentist, I had to go back to school for a couple of years, hence the part 2 of dental school, just so I could be licensed to be able to practice here. As to how I got into Airway and sleep and all of that, as a newlywed, when we moved here, my husband went to school here, was working here when I met him. When I moved here, I remember as a newlywed, I was studying for my national boards. And back then, we married 20 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. There was no FaceTime, no WhatsApp, no pick up the phone and call mom whenever you want to. So we would have preset days and times using a calling card to call home. So you knew that if the phone rang on a day or a time that didn't fall within what you decided, it usually was not good news.
Oh.
And that's exactly what happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. My mom called early in the morning. My husband had just left for work. And the only word she said to me is, "You guys have to come back home." So, of course, I call my husband. We get on a flight and we're headed back home because we found out that my father-in-law, we just lost him. And he was in his mid-50s.
He was young.
Very young, and no health conditions that we knew of that could have contributed to this. Not overweight, ate healthy, exercised, walked, did whatever he needed to do. So needless to say, it was shocking news. But what surprised me more was as we were on our flight home, I was just this hot mess, right? I was crying. I didn't get to spend time with him, thinking of all of these things. My kids would never get to meet him. We didn't have children then. And I turned and I looked at my husband, and he was just, this was on the flight home, and he was just sitting there, like as strong as he could be. And I turned to him and I said, this is not healthy. You got to show some emotion, because I know he's heartbroken, right? And I still get this when I talk about this, I still get the chills. He turned to me and he said, he shrugged his shoulders and he said, "All the men in my family have died at this age."
Oh,
And he'd lost his grandfather then, he'd lost an uncle then, now his dad. So it was almost a we expect this kind of thing. And, I guess over the years they had heard, oh, it's genetic. Oh, it's genetic. Oh, it's how you're made. You can't do anything about it. And I didn't argue with him then. I said, let's go home. Let's be with the family, and my words to him were, we'll figure this out later.
mm.
And in our culture, the mourning period lasts for about 13 days, for 13 days. So while the rest of the family did what they needed to do, I gathered everything I could find that he had saved by way of medical records. And I went and spoke to every doctor that was willing to speak with me.
Wow.
About the what's, the hows, the whys. That was my question. And consistently, the answer that came up was sleep apnea. Now,
Really?
I don't know if he had a CPAP. I know for sure oral appliances weren't a thing, at least back home all these years ago. I don't know if he had a CPAP, if he'd used it, if he hated it. I honestly, there's so much unknown at this time. But I remember thinking, I don't ever want to go through this again. And I'll be the first to admit, it's like, I'm selfish. I don't want to go through this again. I want to do this. I want to figure this out for my family. And 20 years ago, I told him, I said, in this day and age, I'm sure there are answers.
Mm-hmm.
So needless to say, we came back, I got into dental school, and I always had this on the back of my head. I got to figure this out. The what, why did it happen? How can I prevent this from happening to my family?
Mm-hmm.
So once I graduated, as an associate, there's only so much you can do, implement, work. But as soon as I bought my practice, the first thing I did was go do whatever I could find. I have a friend that jokes. It's like, if you couldn't find Meghna and you wanted to spend some time with her, go find a CE and you'll find her there. So I embodied the term CE junkie because I was hungry for answers. Mm-hmm. I wanted to connect the dots, which I knew was missing in the puzzle that we were facing. Mm-hmm. And as I got into it, like I said, I wanted it for my family. I didn't want to have to go through this again. But I realized my family grew, right? Because then it was my office manager's dad who had sleep apnea, who had a CPAP. And well, of course, I'm going to want to help him. And then you start to have these conversations, and then your patients are your family. Mm-hmm. And then your best friend's uncle becomes your family. And then their relative in Louisiana becomes your family. And that just grows. Mm-hmm. So that is what set me on my path to treating adult sleep apnea within the practice. Mm-hmm. As I implemented this, we hit roadblocks. We hit big roadblocks as to how are we going to build this? How are we going to make this part of our system, along with all the MODBLs and crowns and implants and everything else that we want to provide our patients? Mm-hmm. So there's a joke within our team. It's like, even our systems, our checklists have checklists. So if we introduce anything within the practice, I make sure I build a system around it. Mm-hmm. Just how my brain functions. And thankfully, my office manager does too. So we then started to have friends. I'd have my friends go like, hey, can I just hang out and watch you guys? It's like, yeah, absolutely, come over. Oh, I send my team to learn from your team. Absolutely, come on over. To finally where somebody said, can you just throw together some slides and just teach us already? Just charge us for it. We'll bring the food. Just teach us. Okay, I can do that too. And so we set out to help our friends. Remember, your family grows. And I remember one day we were looking at my slides. We were reviewing the slides. My office manager and I, she's been with me since the day I started my practice. And we stopped this one slide, and she looked at me and I looked at her, and she goes, Doc, do you think this is Avery? Avery is what she was then, 7. Christina was pregnant with her when she came to work for me. So she's literally my baby, right? I've seen her from in her mommy's belly to now. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because when that child is in your face all day long, there are things that you kind of make excuses around, you kind of look around just because you love them so much.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the sweetest child. I love her to death. But you can tell there were areas where she was struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another rabbit hole I went down, because guess what? I wanted to help my family. That child, I loved her like my own.
Mm-hmm.
And the exact thing happened. I then started to identify this in other kids that we were seeing. We'd have a conversation with a patient about an oral appliance for himself, and he'd go like, doc, my grandson snores too, and he's 4. Can you make him one? No, but I have other solutions for him. So as you go down those paths and those rabbit holes, things started to expand. And like I said, my family grew. But what I also realized, the biggest joy you get is for this patient that comes in and tells you they've had the best night's sleep that they ever have had.
Mm-hmm.
Your 16-year-old teenage patient who runs down the hallway to tell you, doc, I haven't had an accident in 3 weeks. A mom that breaks down because her child is doing the grades, or is finally getting along with his peers, or whatever box you want to check. And kids that you've been able to help, along with their pediatricians, get off of ADHD medications. Mm-hmm. That is why I come to work. Mm-hmm. That is why it's a passion, because not forgetting my original why as to, I don't ever want to go through this again because it impacted my family. Mm-hmm. But if we give this to others, mm-hmm. and expanding it to help other doctors, I can reach 100 patients, 1,000 patients. Mm-hmm. But if I can help other docs implement this, it's easy to learn something, textbook, but to take it and apply it in real life, been through it, we can reach exponentially so many more patients. Mm-hmm. That was how I got to where I got to.
That is the most beautiful story that I have heard in a long time.
Well, thank
you for sharing that. And thank you for, I love your passion, but I love how you've adopted everyone as your family. You obviously have the biggest heart. And then the other piece of it that I think is so important here is you have held strong to your why. And that has just opened doors for you, really. And that is a good lesson for us as dental professionals trying to find our way in this world. What brings us fulfillment? What lights us up? What keeps us coming to work? So
I agree. I agree with you completely. And it's funny because I was talking to my mom yesterday about something. Moms have the most amazing wisdom that you'll ever hear. And you go, how come you haven't told me this before?
Isn't that nice?
And she said, sometimes you have to just sit in the storm. When we are in the middle of a storm, instinct is to do everything we can to get out of it, right? You want to fight your way out. You want to, I don't know, whatever your gut instinct is. And she said, sometimes you just have to sit that storm out. Just sit in it, be within you, and it will blow away. The sun will shine again. And I was like, why have you not told me this in all these years of being my mom?
Mom wisdom.
Oh my gosh, yes. So like you said, to apply it to, there's always so much that dentistry, right, that goes on around us. And sometimes just holding fast to what is your why. And actually, don't get me wrong, there's been struggles that we've had to figure things out, and everything that comes with anything you do, but learning to sit and actually hold fast, I think helps.
Oh, That's great advice. Thank you, Mom.
I know.
Wonderful advice. So tell me then how this evolved into your book, Airway is Life.
I have always wanted to write a book, always. And when I, with training the doctors that I do and seeing the struggles that they have, gut instinct reaction was to write a book to help the doctors. And that's actually what I started to do, because this book has been in the making a year and a half. And I got halfway through it and I said, this is not what I want. This is not who this is for. This book, my why with regards to the book itself, is to help patients, the everyday person, understand and connect the dots, because a lot of times they're the ones that don't know where to go, what to do, who to ask, what help can they get. Mm-hmm. And if we can give them a little bit of a map, a pathway as to, yes, your dentist can help, your ENT can help, this is what a sleep study looks like, or even understand. It's been mind-boggling the amount of feedback and support that I've gotten. Remember, this book was for patients, and my community is dentists. So I had no clue how I was going to get this out. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to write it and we're going to put it on Amazon. And if people find it, they find it. But boy, the dental community came through. The amount of support, encouragement, and doctors sharing this with their patients, with their families, it's been incredible. And every day, messages, this is what I needed for my patients to understand. Patients, I now know what questions to ask. Going back to why I wanted to do this, to help connect the dots, to bridge that gap between what I know and what you need to know to be able to, for me to help you. Mm-hmm. So started with something, thankfully, I figured out where I wanted it to go and evolved into something else.
Oh. And so I suppose this is a phenomenal piece of knowledge that you can share with patients, and then they can actually diagnose themselves and come knowing that this is something they need, or refer a friend or a family member, right? Like, and that
more than diagnostics, I think it is for them to put a name and an understanding to their symptoms. Oh. Why am I so tired? Why does my teenager still wet his bed? What can I do about the ADHD? You truly can't reach a diagnosis without your doctors being involved, but just a better, deeper understanding of maybe it's not just this, it could be this, or maybe it's a combination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So the book is mostly for patients or for the lay person, right? But as a dental professional, you could probably learn a lot from it too, couldn't you?
I should hope so. That's the feedback I've been getting.
Awesome.
I still read books and go like, oh my God, I didn't know this, because perspective, there's so much research coming out that if, once upon a time, one of my mentors, Dr. Carl Misch, told me this, and he said, you go to every class, every CE that you can. If you pick up one pearl, that's all I ask, pick up one pearl, you make your own necklace. And that's going to be the only necklace of that kind in the whole entire world. And that has stuck with me, because you never know what you're going to learn.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's awesome. Well, the link for the book is right below us, but I'll make sure and include it in the show notes. Definitely something you should have in your practice, in your home, give to your friends. I mean, it could save a life.
That is the goal.
Wow. What is the most interesting diagnosis or symptom that someone has had that you've been able to help them with because of their sleep disordered breathing? Can you think of one?
Honestly, it varies just because what may seem normal, for lack of a better word, to somebody else may be what's impacting another person's life. So like I said, it is not uncommon for us to see teenagers that still wet their bed. People that present with chronic pain where sleep disordered breathing, their sleep apnea or upper air resistance syndrome is contributing to that. Sexual dysfunction, not uncommon. We had this 25-year-old find his way to the practice because he had exhausted every single link path that he could for the troubles he was having. And just me saying, hey, get your sleep evaluated. How could it hurt? And he was desperate for answers. Lo and behold, that was it. It's not uncommon to have patients break down in the chair because we had this one lady who said, we talked about everything, helped connect the dots. And she just sat and she broke down. She said, so I'm not crazy. Oh, no, ma'am, you aren't crazy. Because nobody had been able to help her understand what was going on. And the answer, a lot of times, it's easier to write a prescription. It's easier to give you a pill. It's easier to say, try this. But when you go that long, it's heartbreaking some days. And then some days you're like, first patient, can I go home? I'm done. That patient just makes your day. They're feeling amazing. You see the results that they came to you for, and you're like, my day can't get better. Let me go home already.
Right. Oh, fantastic. It's amazing how foundational sleep is to so much.
Yes.
And just making sure we get a good night's sleep. And then you can be doing everything right and still have sleep disordered breathing and not be getting a good night's sleep.
Exactly.
So what a blessing. I bet your days are just full of those moments. So congratulations. You've mentioned this, you help dentists and their teams implement this. Now, surely there are, like you said, roadblocks. What are the most common roadblocks that a dental office runs into when they first start wanting to implement this into their practice?
The biggest one, and I am constantly harping on my doctors about this, is getting the team on board. And not because your team doesn't understand the importance of the value of what this service provides for our patients, but because it is one additional thing. And the mindset is, I'm running late as it is. I have 30 things to talk to the patient, and now you want me to say one more thing. And these are big conversations. They're long conversations. You can be running late, but once we get that wrapped around, it's a much easier flow. And another thing that I find teams get stuck on, doctors, is the medical aspect of it, billing. Because sleep apnea appliances for adults get billed to medical. Dental doesn't pay for that. And it's a whole different animal. It's a different language that we have to learn to speak. The team has to learn to speak. And it can get overwhelming because, when you're at a class and you're learning about this cool new way to do this cool new procedure, and you're all fired up, and you want to do it, you have all these plans, guilty, and then you come back to the practice on Monday, and the team either goes, she's done this before, we've gone through this a million times, give her 2 days and we'll be back on track. Or the team understands what you want to do, why you want to do it. You want to, but life happens, right? We still have that extraction waiting for us. We still have the buccal pit. We still have the crown that won't seat. Life happens, and it's so easy. It's like working out. It's so easy to go, I'll do it tomorrow.
Right? Yes. Yes. So you, though, because you're a system person, you've developed probably systems around this, and
Yes.
and that's what you help teams implement, teams and offices.
Correct.
Well, you've kind of done the hard work and hit the roadblocks and figured
Yeah,
out what works, what doesn't work. So, they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, do they?
that's exactly what I tell them. So when I have doctors that come to me to get trained, there's two groups, right? One is somebody that has never gotten trained and they're afraid to do it and then not be able to take it back to the practice. I learned everything, but you go back and you're like, what next? Can you hold my hand? So those docs, we get them trained and you start off the right way. You basically go back with the systems and that becomes your system. And then the other group is docs that have learned, like they have this passion. They've done what they needed to do by way of training, but something happened among these roadblocks and they're like, I need help. I know this is important, but I need to know. It's more of a come hold my hand and tell me what to do. And that's exactly where we help them. We give you a system. And like you said, no need to reinvent the wheel. Just take it. And are you done with checking box 1? Time to move on to box 2. Make sure you do that before you jump to 3 or 4. And as long as you follow that, you get to where you need to.
Fantastic. That's I think that having a check system and having support and somebody that is there for you really helps bridge that gap between wanting to do it and actually doing it.
Yes. We've all been there, haven't we?
And I bet that you see those resistant teams probably completely change once they start seeing their patients' results.
Exactly. I find, it's not that our team members they don't want to do it or they think it's additional work. You have to be in healthcare for a reason. You really, at some level, we want to impact lives, A lot of times, though, what I find is the resistance comes from fear. The fear of looking stupid, the fear of feeling stupid, the fear of doing the wrong thing, the fear of upsetting my doctor, the fear of upsetting the patient. And when we are able to address all of those concerns, when we are able to give you the tools to be able to do it and do it right, almost like here's a GPS, here's a cookbook, follow the steps, they become your biggest advocates. Sleep is a team-driven procedure. In my office, my team runs it. It's a common joke. You know how as docs we have this one-liner we say to all of our patients, the team laughs because, well, they're supposed to, but they've heard it a million times. Mine is I go in, my team has done everything with the patient. I go in and the patient's nodding their head as I go over everything. I was like, I could have stayed home. I don't know why they had to bring me into work. They're laughing. They've heard it a million times. That's exactly what we want. We want the doctor should be doing dentistry. The team can have this conversation, the education, the connection with the patients to where I come in to do what I need to do. That's how you don't run late. And that is where your team can be your biggest advocates. In my office, my team sees this as their legacy. This is how they are making a change, how they are impacting, bringing about the change that they want to see around them. It's super powerful to watch.
Oh, and that just lends itself well to, that is a big passion of yours, is creating a culture of leadership and then creating a legacy, not just for the doctor, but for the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a strong believer in creating leaders. Every individual in your team, it could be a leadership team or not. It could be the sterilization tech that is fresh out of assisting school or aspires to do something someday. Without developing and inculcating that, giving them the opportunity and the tools to do that, to be that, I think we're doing them a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I want my team to stay with me until I retire, I want my assistant to go to dental school. Mm-hmm. I've had assistants go into nursing. I've had hygienists go into dental school. I have one right now that came in saying, I want to be a dentist. You go, girl. I'll support you however I can. But I think that is key. Enabling, giving them the tools to grow.
Mm-hmm. And that, I think that is one of the big reasons that we are put on this earth is for that. And your story all started with your father-in-law's passing. And look at how it's evolved.
Yes.
What a legacy that you continue for him. That brings it full circle, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I want everyone to go out and get this book if you don't have it already, because it could save a life and it could create a legacy. And
how many patients you could impact, how many lives, how many families, for sure.
Yes. Yes. And then make sure that you connect with Dr. Dassani if you want any training, implementation, if you need any help in this area. Her website is down below. I'll make sure it's included in the show notes along with all the other links. So I want to thank you for spending some time telling us this important information and weaving it so beautifully within your story. Is there anything else? Yeah, you bet. Is there anything else that any other message you want to give our audience today before we sign off?
The only thing I would say is be persistent and don't give up. If you don't like the answer you're getting, if you're a parent that isn't quite getting the answer that, if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to get a second opinion. If you're a doctor that knows something, it could be adding a specific procedure to your practice isn't getting you the results you want. Invest in yourself, invest in your team, sit in the storm, persist, don't give up, because there is always a way out, and it's just a matter of finding the right person. So, yeah.
That's fantastic advice. Well, we will leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And remember, you are the CEO of your life. Now become the boss of your balance, and make sure you're getting a good night's sleep, too. All right. Cheers. Thank you, Dr. Dassani.
Thank you.